Thanks.
Good. I know our timing's not great with the legislature right now.
No, everything's crazy over there
I
today.
know. Well, consider yourself getting some peace and quiet over here. All right, you ready to go?
Ready.
Okay. Well, I want to give you a chance to look over a little bit of this information, but we've been studying, and I particularly have been studying the effects of the Citizens United decision on Ohio elections. And as you might know, there was a pretty lengthy dissent by Justice Stevens, which included the effect that it would have on the states. And with my past background in campaign finance and a lot of the work that I've done with people around the state, I actually took a crack at drafting legislation myself, and then went ahead and summarized what we are asking the legislature to do regarding the effects of the decision. Obviously, we can't change the effects of we can't change the Supreme Court's decision, but we can make sure that we provide for transparency and accountability by corporate interests, but it also gives us the opportunity to bring everyone into the fold when it comes to independent expenditures. My concern has been that at first blush, you think about a corporation putting its name on an ad on TV or on the radio about a particular candidate, either for or against the candidate, but it really goes beyond that. It's not completely analogous, but in the Let Ohio Vote situation, they were able to set up a nonprofit corporation even outside of Ohio, and then all the money to support the effort went into the nonprofit. The same thing could happen with independent expenditures. A nonprofit or for-profit corporation, but most likely a nonprofit could be set up. Many corporations with the same interests, whether it's in banking or insurance or healthcare, what have you, could then contribute to that nonprofit corporation, knowing that it was going to make independent expenditures. And then we would have a similar situation where we really wouldn't know who was behind the ad, because you could put a name on the group like Citizens United. And so there is a way to get at this. Already in the statute in Ohio, when corporations contribute or spend money on ballot issue campaigns, they're required to file a form, for lack of a better designation, it's known as a 30B1 form, but it's just evidence that corporation has spent its money or made an in-kind contribution on some type of a ballot issue campaign. If we extend that structure over to independent expenditures, when the corporation spends its money, and so the onus is on the corporation, is spending its money for an independent expenditure, either directly putting its name in the disclaimer, making the payment for the advertisement directly, or contributing to an effort that is going to be making the independent expenditure and actually running the ad, it would still be required to say, this is what I spent on an independent expenditure regarding this candidate, either for or against. And when you start looking at where we start from in Ohio, the prohibition is on a corporation right now in the code from using its money or property for any partisan political purpose. So partisan political purpose necessarily would include a legislative caucus committee, a political action committee that's giving money to candidates that have a party label on them, a political party. And when you look at what's already in the code right now with the prohibition, they do include labor organization, but because of the entity known as a political contributing entity, which is actually a segregated fund that can be made up of membership dues of a labor organization, it makes sense to try to corral everyone in here and to look at who could possibly benefit from an independent expenditure and who could possibly make an independent expenditure. And we're not at this time looking at federal law, because that's really not where the focus is when we're looking at the Ohio statute. Federal law, I want to make clear, is already treats corporations and labor organizations equally, while Ohio law recognizes the differences between the two, that a corporation is there to make profits for its shareholders, while a labor organization is representing its members. So labor organizations do have a little more direct play already in campaigns and elections at the state and the county level. But again, when it comes to the whole concept of independent expenditures, for which there's no limit on contributions for an independent expenditure, unless we're going to at some point call the entity making the expenditure a PAC. And the way that we set up the drafting, which you don't see in here, but in the nuances of the legislation, is that at some point an entity could be deemed to be a PAC, depending upon its membership status. So we're saying what we're doing is trying to look at at all the ways the money could flow between the entities that can make the independent expenditures and between the entities that can benefit from the independent expenditures. So that's where we get, and when we're talking about independent expenditures, we break it into two categories: direct expenditures. So if I'm ABC Corporation and I want to make a statement about a particular candidate or even a particular party or even a group of candidates, and I put my disclaimer on there as the corporation, that's a direct expenditure. But if I'm ABC Corporation and I want to join together with 10 other corporations and put our money into a nonprofit corporation and have that make the independent expenditure, as the donating corporation to the entity that's actually going to put its name on the disclaimer, I still have a responsibility to say, I put this much money into this effort to make an independent expenditure. And whenever you want to make changes, it's always best to try to fit within the existing groups. And corporations are already used to doing this. This will, though, be something new if you have, for instance, a political party or a legislative campaign fund that wants to make a truly independent expenditure in regard to a particular candidate. They'll have to comply with the same requirements, so that we're making sure, the bottom line, that the public has the ability to try to discern who's making the speech and who really, not just directly but also indirectly, and can be better informed in making their decisions about the interests and the concerns of the people making the speech, because this is meant to influence their vote. Now, one of the other issues that is coming up as they deliberate what to do federally about this is the issue of a for-profit domestic corporation that's owned in whole or in part by a foreign out-of-country corporation. Oftentimes in Ohio we call a foreign corporation something that's out of state, but this would be an out-of-country. So what we've seen at the federal level is the proposal at this point is that if the corporation is owned by at least 20%, owned at least 20% by a foreign or out-of-country corporation, it cannot make an independent expenditure. And then also, if the corporation is receiving state funds or federal funds issued by the state of Ohio, it cannot make independent expenditures. I think the last thing people would want is for the government to be paying money to a corporation that turns around and somehow uses that money to try to influence the results of an election. Of course, all the independent expenditures, in terms of advertising, we have to have a disclaimer. And when it comes to the broadcast media, TV, radio, we also have the capability here in the Secretary of State's office to actually keep a registry of the digital copies of the ads, so that ordinary citizens would be able to go onto our website, take a look at the ad, and we also want a digital copy of the schedule where it's going to be airing, and as they make changes in the traffic instructions to air the ads, that we get that as well. Because if someone sees a particular ad at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they don't remember who was on the disclaimer, it would give them a chance to actually cross-reference and try to get a sense of who was really behind the ad.